Good night, everyone. We are beginning with Genesis chapter 34 from the English Standard Version. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the women of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he seized her and lay with her and humiliated her. And his soul was drawn to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this girl for my wife." Now Jacob heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah, but his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob held his peace until they came. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. The sons of Jacob had come in from the field as soon as they heard it, and the men were indignant and very angry because he had done an outrageous thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing must not be done. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, "The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him to be his wife. Make marriages with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. You shall dwell with us, and the land shall be open to you. Dwell and trade in it, and get property in it." Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, "Let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you say to me, I will give. Ask me for as great a bride price and gift as you will, and I will give whatever you say to me. Only give me the young woman to be my wife." The sons of Jacob answered Shechem and his father Hamor deceitfully, because he had defiled their sister Dinah. They said to them, "We cannot do this thing, to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we agree with you, that you will become as we are, by every male among you being circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to ourselves, and we will dwell with you and become one people. But if you will not listen to us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and we will be gone." Their words pleased Hamor and Hamor's son Shechem, and the young man did not delay to do the thing, because he delighted in Jacob's daughter. Now he was the most honored of all his father's house. So Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city and spoke to the men of their city, saying, "These men are at peace with us. Let them dwell in the land and trade in it. For behold, the land is large enough for them. Let them take their daughters as wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only on this condition will the men agree to dwell with us, to become one people. When every male among us is circumcised, as they are circumcised, will not their livestock, their property, and all their beasts be ours? Only let us agree with them, and they will dwell with us. And all who went out of the gate of his city listened to Hamor and to his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city. On the third day, when they were sore, two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and came against the city while it felt secure, and killed all the males. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house, and went away. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain, and plundered the city, because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds, their donkeys, and whatever was in the city and in the field, all their wealth, all their little ones, and their wives, all that was in the houses, they captured and plundered. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me stink to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My numbers are few, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed, both I and my household." But they said, "Should he treat our sister like a prostitute?" Chapter 35. God said to Jacob, "Arise, go to Bethel and dwell there. Make an altar there to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau." So Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, "Put away the foreign gods that are among you, and purify yourselves, and change your garments. Then let us arise and go up to Bethel, so that I may make there an altar to the God who answers me in the day of my distress, and has been with me wherever I have gone." So they gave to Jacob all the foreign gods that they had, and the rings that were in their ears. Jacob hid them under the terebinth tree that was near Shechem. And as they journeyed, a terror from God fell upon the cities that were around them, so that they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. And Jacob came to Luz, that is Bethel, which is in the land of Canaan, he and all the people who were with him. And there he built an altar, and called the place El Bethel, because there God had revealed himself to him when he fled from his brother. And Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried under an oak below Bethel. So he called its name Allon Bacuth. God appeared to Jacob again when he came from Padan Aram, and blessed him. And God said to him, "Your name is Jacob. No longer shall your name be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name." So he called his name Israel. And God said to him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall come from you, and kings shall come from your own body. The land that I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I will give to you, and I will give the land to your offspring after you. Then God went up from him in the place where he had spoken with him. And Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he had spoken with him, a pillar of stone. He poured out a drink offering on it and poured oil on it. So Jacob called the name of the place where God had spoken with him, Bethel. Then they journeyed from Bethel. When they were still some distance from Ephrath, Rachel went into labor, and she had hard labor. And when her labor was at its hardest, the midwife said to her, "Do not fear, for you have another son." And as her soul was departing, for she was dying, she called his name Ben-Oni, but his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died, and she was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. And Jacob set up a pillar over her tomb. It is the pillar of Rachel's tomb, which is there to this day. Israel journeyed on and pitched his tent beyond the tower of Eder. While Israel lived in that land, Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard of it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. The sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's servant, Dan and Naphtali. The son of Zilpah, Leah's servant, Gad and Asher. These were the sons of Jacob, who were born to him in Padan Aram. And Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre, or Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had sojourned. Now, the days of Isaac were 180 years, and Isaac breathed his last, and he died, and was gathered to his people, old and full of days. And his sons, Esau and Jacob, buried him. You all could unmute yourselves and we'll start the discussion. Let me just get my answers here. First question to Tammy. What calamity befell Dinah?
While Dinah was going to visit some of the young women who lived in the area, the local prince Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, saw her, seized her, and raped her.
1 second, I seem to have lost my file. Don't know what happened. You're seeing it now?
Yeah.
Okay. Next question. What did Shechem want to do about this deed? He wanted to marry her because he fell in love with her. And well, Tammy, you could read out your questions.
What did Hamor and Shechem propose? Hamor and Shechem proposed marriage between Shechem and Dinah and to arrange other marriages between their households. and they lay an offer for them to settle and trade and buy land in the area.
And number 4, how did the sons of Jacob reply? They pretended to agree to let Dinah marry Shechem and intermarry with the people of the land, if the males all agreed to be circumcised.
Number 5, did Hamor and Shechem accept this proposal? Yes, they did. And they went to convince the other men to agree to be circumcised as well.
And number 6, did the men of Shechem agree? Yes.
Number 7, what did the sons of Jacob then do? 3 days later, Simeon and Levi took their swords and entered the town, and they slaughtered every male, including Hamor and Shechem. They took Dinah from Shechem's house and returned to their camp. The rest of Jacob's sons plundered the town and seized everything they could. They also took all the women and children as captives.
And number 8, did Jacob approve of this? No, he was concerned about his reputation with the Canaanites and the Perizzites, who could join forces and crush them.
Number 9, how did they defend their actions? They said, but why should we let them treat our sister like a prostitute?
Next, the thought questions. Number 1, you could start, Tammy.
Number 1, what was Shechem like? How did he compare to the other Hivites? Shechem was a rapist and therefore a vile man. Somehow, though, he was more honorable than all the men in his father's household. He also seems entitled because he assumes that he would be able to marry Dinah.
Yeah, I have actually you could answer question 2 at the same time. I think 1 and 2 kind of go
Okay.
together.
Number 2, what does this indicate about the character of these people? That they were very sinful and ungodly people.
Yeah. Okay, so I have he was morally corrupt, and the other Hivites were the same. And verse 18 indicates that he may have been more honorable than they were, but that does not say much. And for number 2, what does this indicate about the character of these people? They had a very low character. So from what I was looking at in the commentary, it said that unattached young women were considered, this is directly from the commentary, unattached young women were considered fair game in cities of the time, in which promiscuity was not only common, but part of the religious system itself. And we also note that the father and the son did not even bother to apologize for the crime. So they went and they tried to bargain for her. They really did bargain for her as if she was a prostitute. And they did not even, maybe it would have been better than dropping her on the side of the road or something, but, or maybe it was better than killing her, but they didn't even apologize. And the fact is, like, that culture was a really terrible, vile culture. So that it was like normal for them to just rape women. They didn't even think of it as wrong. It's just like, okay, well, she there. So it's very unthinkable to even like compare how you, what kind of, I don't know what kind of society that was, where they wouldn't even feel guilty about it.
Bunch of degenerates.
I feel, yeah. So I feel if Shechem was born like in another culture, if he was raised differently, he would have been fine. But like it's just the culture was just so low that he didn't really stand much of a chance.
Rose,
Is
your
that
camera on, by the way.
hmm?
No, Rose's camera on.
Take off your camera.
Okay.
You can
Okay.
Take off the camera. Take
yeah,
it off. Okay, sorry.
you can take the camera off and leave the audio on.
Right. All right. It's no,
All right, yeah.
it's no shucks.
All right. So question that was a very sad thing. And that is why, like, even I was thinking about like Abraham did not want Isaac to take a wife from the Canaanites because they were terrible, they were always terrible, right? Like rape and human sacrifice. That was normal for them. And even when he wanted to get a wife for Isaac from Padan Aram. Now they were still worshiping idols there because like Laban had his idols. He didn't worship the actual God. But at the same time, it wasn't the same level of debauchery that was going on in Canaan. It wasn't the same sort of practices. So that is why they didn't really have any business camping so close to Canaan anyway. Right? They or like to a major city. That was a bad influence on them. They should not have been so close to them. And from the commentaries, they were saying that the amount of time that was spent from the time that they started to camp and up to this incident was about 10 years.
Huh?
Yeah. Because Dinah was, remember, she was like a very young child, and now she's like a young lady, probably maybe like a very young teenager at this time. So she had time to grow up there.
Long time days, we really and truly have a lot of reveling. I mean, you have reveling now, but wow, back then.
And what were the difficulties of Israel's dwelling with the Canaanites in the land? I was kind of talking about that. Let me answer and then Tammy can answer. They were few in number and could easily have been outmatched in battle. And in addition to that, intermarriage would corrupt their culture and their emerging faith. And it would also encourage idolatry and sinful behavior.
They would have had a negative impact and ungodly influence on them.
And that was. All right, so I will start with this one. Why did Jacob build an altar at Bethel? God told him to settle there and build an altar where he first appeared to Jacob when Jacob fled from Esau. Jacob was to acknowledge that God always answered his prayers and was with him when he was in distress.
Number 2. What did Jacob command his household? What did they do? Jacob told everyone in his household to get rid of all their pagan idols, to purify themselves and put on clean clothes. They gave Jacob all their pagan idols and earrings, and he buried them under the great tree near Shechem.
Okay, and why was Jacob not attacked by the inhabitants of the land? God put terror in them so that they did not attack Jacob's family.
Number 4. What did he call the place where he built the altar? Why? He called it El Bethel, which means God of Bethel, because God had appeared to him there when he was fleeing from his brother Esau.
And Number 5, who died there? Rebecca's old nurse, Deborah. Tammy, you could continue.
Number 1, what did God confirm about Jacob's name? That his name would now be Israel.
And number 2, how did Jacob memorialize the place where God appeared? He set a pillar of stone, poured a drink offering on it, and then he poured oil on it. And then the thought question. What I find this one was, okay, you could do the thought question, because I find this was more of a fact question.
Yeah. What blessings and promises did God renew with Jacob? God told Jacob to be fruitful and multiply, that he would become a great nation, even many nations, and that kings would be among his descendants. He also told him he would give him the land he had once given Abraham and Isaac, and that he would give it to Jacob's descendants after him.
Yeah. Next, relate the death and burial of Rachel. Rachel went into labor when the camp was en route from Bethel to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. She had a difficult delivery and named her baby Ben-Oni, which means, Benjamin, which means son of my, no, I get it mixed up. She named her baby Ben-Oni, which means son of my sorrow. But Jacob called him Benjamin, which means son of my right hand. She died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, and Jacob set a pillar over her grave.
Where did Jacob then go? Migdal Eder.
Yeah. What sin did Reuben commit? He slept with Bilhah, his father's concubine.
Where did Jacob then come? Who was there? Jacob returned to his father Isaac in Mamre, which is near to Kiryat Arba. Isaac was there.
All right. And then the thought, okay, you can answer the thought question one time.
What was the significance of Reuben's sin? He sinned against his father and committed incest.
I don't know if that was considered incest. I have so he slept with his father's concubine, and I have two possible reasons for it. First of all, one of the reasons was possibly due to the influence of the Canaanite culture. It was a pagan ritual for the eldest son, whenever he received his inheritance from the father, that he would, when he took over his father's estate, he would also take over his father's harem. He would take over the concubines. So this, first of all, this was not an Israelite practice. And second of all, Reuben didn't even receive his inheritance at this point in time. So this was an act of insubordination by Reuben. And also, this incident, it came directly after Rachel died. And we know that Rachel was Jacob's favorite wife. So it's possible that Reuben was trying to secure his mother's position as the only wife to Jacob. he may have suspected that Jacob cared for Bilhah more than his mother, Leah, and may have wanted to become legally married to her. And even if this were not the case, even if Bilhah was simply to remain a concubine, Reuben did not want her to be more favored than his mother, Leah. So that's another possibility. Next, tell of Isaac's death and burial. Tammy, you want to answer that one?
Okay. Isaac lived for 180 years. He breathed his last breath and died at an old age, joining his ancestors in death. His sons Esau and Jacob buried him.
Okay. So Genesis chapter 36, we could omit the reading of this chapter because it's mostly a genealogy, but we could just answer the questions. I'll answer the first one. Where did Esau and his family move and why? They moved to Seir, the land in Canaan. This was because the land in Canaan couldn't support both his and Jacob's livestock possessions and the number of people that were there.
What prophecy is contained in verse 31? That there would be kings who ruled over Israel.
And you all have any thoughts, questions, or comments on what we covered in the past few chapters?
All right, I find this long time days really and truly. It's so much incest. That is why now it's still saying have incest now. So what is in the beginning will be in the end.
Oh, now you were saying that wouldn't really be considered
I
incest.
don't know if it was considered incest. It would be wrong. But remember, Bilhah wasn't really related to him as such.
Yeah, I mean, it was related. It's not related in the sense that she would have been the mother of his brothers.
Well, kind of, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, and a brother's wife, his brother's wife.
His father's wife, his father's concubine.
And he was going with his father's concubine.
Yes. Well, he did it once. I don't know if it was a repeated thing.
Well, I know. Just my thought about it is that is so wrong. It doesn't matter no blood, but somebody your father went with.
You see, what happened is, what I was thinking is Reuben probably had like a resentment towards Jacob.
Okay.
Because remember, he's the firstborn. So he's the one who saw more than anyone else. The way
yes,
that now Jacob was really trying his best in a bad situation. But he would have seen how much pain his mother went through.
Yeah.
Right? So he would have held that against Jacob all the time. That Jacob just clearly loved the other woman more, Rachel more.
Yeah.
And then he maybe didn't mistreat Leah, but he wasn't maybe as kind to Leah as he could have been. And then he had clear favorites with his children as well. So Reuben didn't have that much respect for the father, for Jacob. So that's why he was acting like that. I feel that's what I think.
Well, I think in that also you bring it out is disrespect. Show him that this total disrespect. Because if he had respect for him, he would not go with his father's wife, well, with a father's concubine.
And also, what I was noticing from reading the chapter as well as the commentaries, Jacob, first of all, he had lied to his brother, right? Because he had told Esau that he was coming down to Seir with him. And then he ended up going and living somewhere else, right? So he lied to his brother. And then he went and camped so close to the Canaanite city, which he shouldn't have gone to, at least not that close. And then he was there for a very long time. And then that's why the influences of that place crept into his family. That's why they had all those idols in the first place, right? Where else they would I get the idols? They get it from Shechem, the city of Shechem, because they were so close. And well, we don't know for sure what was if Dinah was. Do you think she was on? She just went there unaccompanied. The Bible didn't actually say exactly. Do you think she just went by herself, or you think she
I
went
would
with
think
people?
so. If she was very young, she wouldn't go by herself.
But not very young, she would have been like, remember, she would have been 13, 14. They would have considered her a young woman at that time.
But at 13, 14 years on their own. Remember, long time days was always accompanied by men, you know. Women, even back then, especially when they was young. So they will be accompanied
Okay,
by
let's
men.
think about how, like, you see, it was at different places have different cultures. Because in Padanaram, it was normal for Rachel to go as a shepherdess, and go and gather and bring out the sheep, and she wasn't accompanied. She just went with the sheep and they to the well, and because it was a different culture, nobody expected the shepherds that were there to just go out and hold her. Or when Rebecca was went with her water jug to the well, she was unaccompanied too. Nobody was expecting anything wrong because there was a different culture. But this culture, the Canaanite culture, was different. So you could not have, maybe they didn't, I don't know how much they even knew. Maybe she didn't know, right? But she clearly didn't know. She would, if she had known, she would not go. But didn't really, see, you can't expect a 13-year-old to know how to behave or what to do or where to go. I'm assuming she was 13 based
Exactly,
on what I
because
saw in the
Rachel
right?
and them, when they be 13 and 14 years, they will be probably teenagers, like young, like 19 and 20, that age, I think, because they would never get married at 13 and 14 years.
You sure about that?
I think,
If we have great grandparents who used to get married at 14, why they wouldn't get married at 14 back then?
well, when you check on Moses, and Moses wasn't young, you know. He was young, but not that young when he ran away.
Because most people say that Mary was about 14 when she was engaged to Joseph.
Well, I really didn't, I don't know that. I never heard that. So I don't, but I know long-time Indian people and Muslims still have that thing, marrying off, and even in African, and which that's child marriage, and is not really sanctioned, you know.
Yeah, because they didn't, because, okay, if you look at it, when they said, oh, let's marry her, they didn't say, oh, no, she's still a child, she can't marry. They didn't, that was never anything, the age was not even an issue. I remember she was young.
They say as soon as they get periods, they consider as a young lady. And not only two. Yes, back then in those days, and they would marry them. And sometimes if you see a boy and a girl, like long time Indian parent people, they say for a fact there, and they will marry them. I remember my neighbor, he said she was married by 9 years, but they didn't go and sleep together. But when they reached by 12 years, right, they put them together to sleep. But the marriage didn't last because they were young. When you hear the history, like long time people, my neighbor, when she passed away, but I still listen to them old people. And they end up, most of the time they end up with their first husband. Because arranged marriages. Their husband beat them, they go on their way and wherever it is. But you know, people don't talk about it, but it really happened. It happened even in my eyes that I know history when it's a talk. So
All
some
right.
cultures, yeah, go ahead.
No, anything else?
No, just some cultures carry on still child marriages still in Africa, on India, I'll put again, Muslims.
Okay, Tammy, you had any questions or comments?
No.
Okay.